The next slide relates to taking the 4 key components and discusses how we implement those components into an appropriate training environment to make sure we're developing our players. So when we think about tactics, we're thinking about decisions. So we take game understanding, and we want to make sure we're doing what we can as coaches to affect and enhance the game understanding of our players. The tremendous benefit that we've had the opportunity to take advantage of with our current generation of players is really trying to poke and prod and beg and bribe and try to get our players to watch more professional games. Get out to college games in the area. We have a lot of great colleges locally here inside Michigan where our players can watch a higher level of game. We have a very successful PDL franchise where top college players are playing in the summer in hopes of getting drafted in the MLS. That's been very successful. Beyond getting to a game and watching it live, the availability of professional soccer teams on network television, cable television, and the accessibility of soccer at a professional level into players' homes has expanded exponentially in the last 5-10 years. So the more our players watch professional players and watch their quote-unquote heroes make decisions, and they can take those decisions and take those examples of technique and apply them into their own game as they've been modeled by the pros, the better off our players are going to be. So in relating to our club, outside of watching professional players play and PDL players and college players, the game understanding is really enhanced by experiments, trial and error. Are our players willing to take risks and make various decisions? And what is the feedback? Do our players and coaches have this positive future mentality when they're talking to their teammates and giving feedback, and our coaches are talking to players and giving feedback? If I kick the ball out of bounds and our team gets the throw, I certainly know that I've made a mistake. But that doesn't mean that our players need to be beat up over the mistake verbally or chastised for the mistake. What we want to do is talk in a positive future tone. So next time, maybe we can turn our hips and shoulders and follow through to the inside. Maybe next time we can receive the ball across our body so our preparation touch does not take us out of bounds. A couple examples there. So the game understanding is really enhancing the training ground through communication, and we're trying to really expand our players' awareness, their vision, and allow them to give each other feedback. Coaches and players certainly communicating with question and answers so that we are taking care of expanding our game understanding of our players and developing our players. The next component we want to highlight that helps shape an appropriate training environment for player development is intensity and its relationship to the physical side of the game. We would like our players to have their competitive self as sophisticated as their social self. Their social self and honoring the game. We want our players to shake hands with the opponent after games, shake hands with the opposing coach, shake hands with the referee, and this relates to our integrity and our social norms that we try to model and shape with our players. In many ways, conversely, our competitive culture we also want to shape, and this happens day in and day out on the training grounds. So we want our players to be prepared for competition, and we believe our players are victims of habits. So one of the habits we want to form is intensity in our training sessions. We want our players to play at a speed of play in training like they will in the game. We do not want our players to be underprepared in the game because the intensity of our training and our speed of play in training is too slow. We want to be as game-like as possible in training. So we're trying to foster our players' competitive values in their competitive self, where they thrive on competition and training. They are willing to embrace competition with their teammates, not in a manner where a teammate will feel shame or cliques develop or there's negativity or divisiveness. We want our players not to win at everything they do, but we want our players to compete at everything that they do in training. So we try to foster this intensity so training is conducted in a game-like manner in terms of the speed of play, and this will bring out the physical side of the game within our players. Are there exceptions to that? Of course there are. One notable exception is for our younger players when they're learning technique. To learn a new turn or dribbling move or surface work on shooting and bending a ball, and to say to those players at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, okay, now we're going to learn this new turn or this new dribbling move, and we're going to do it at game speed under game of pressure with an opponent, is not realistic for our players to learn. It's not going to bring out confidence in our players. So our coaches are always implementing this sort of balance of teaching versus fostering this intensity on this learning curve, so our players are feeling comfortable, but not too comfortable, not content, always engaged, always thirsty for competition, and wanting to compete against each other to make himself feel better, herself feel better, and improve their teammates by conducting themselves as a good opponent in training. So another exception to that would be some of our older teams that are rehearsing different restarts for attacking situations and defending situations. So these would be some exceptions to the rule for our intensity. But by and large, the culture of our club, as fostered by our players, our coaches, and our parents, we want our players to be in a game-like, intense training environment, and we believe wholeheartedly that that training environment will create good habits of players and replicate itself during the match, during the game. Taking a quick look at the illustration here provided to us by US Soccer, we review the initial stage for our 6s, 7s, and 8s, their introduction into soccer, the basic stage, 9s, 10s, 11s, and 12s, where we're giving them their soccer fundamentals, the intermediate stage, 13s and 14s, beginning to learn to compete and play in various shapes, exercising various principles, in the advanced stage, our 15s, 16s, 17s, and 18s. When we take a look at tactics and we're thinking about organization and decision making, we see the clear trend here. U13s through U18s, the emphasis on tactics. When we take a look at the next slide, technique, we'll kind of compare the early emphasis on technique for our younger ages. Does that mean tactics are not important to our young ages? That's a concern from some parents in our club. Certainly not prevalent, but it does happen. For example, at U8, U9, and U10, our kickoff play, players look a little bit uncertain, hesitant. Why don't we spend time in training, rehearsing our movements and our plays, quote unquote, for our kickoff so our players can execute better? If we're better organized on setting up a wall on defensive restarts, organizing corner kick plays, kickoffs, this gives us a better advantage in a competitive environment to win games. And we're certainly concerned with the prevalent value of winning in our culture. And we thrive on that, and we don't want to run away from it. The concern is when the value of winning is held in higher value than the value of development. And we can certainly do a lot more with our players to organize them in a more, I guess, clear fashion to make sure that they can execute some plays that will give us short-term winning. And maybe our team moves up a division in a league, or finishes first place at a weekend tournament or what have you. And we don't want to hold our players back or keep them from winning. But when we're trying to develop players in the long term, we have to make decisions on what's going to be the higher level of importance. And as a club, and certainly supported by this curriculum put out by US Soccer, we put a much higher emphasis on our younger ages on our technical skill acquisition, our learning technique over the organization and decisions. We believe when winning becomes more important and more critical at the latter stages of our youth system, that our players will be able to learn the organization of our restarts, of our defending, of our attacking style pretty easily. And the learning curve for that comes pretty easily to the players as they become more sophisticated and gain more experience. To learn new techniques at the older ages in our club is a challenge. This golden era of technical skill acquisition, ages 6 through 12, is something that we cannot ignore, and we want to take advantage of it, whether it's soccer, playing the piano, basketball, whatever it happens to be. Players are learning new skills the easiest or at the highest learning curve, ages 6 through 12. So are we going to spend more of our time organizing plays or teaching our players skills? We're going to spend more of our time teaching our younger players techniques and skills. What we try to do is form this term economical training, where we're teaching a technique within a tactical framework. So our players are learning techniques within an organizational model that's relative to the game. So they can transfer the technique from training into a game and they understand the relevance of it. So, we very well could work on passing and moving as well as a receiving technique from a goal kick or from a kickoff for our younger ages, or even from a corner kick. So we can work on techniques within an organizational framework, and we certainly challenge and task our coaches to do so. But if we're going to pick a priority for our younger ages, as we can see by this chart, we're going to favor the tactics later in the player development in place of technique at the earlier ages. And it's not to diminish the importance of tactics, it's just to place a greater emphasis on our players learning techniques at a younger age. And in the long-term view, our players will become better players who are comfortable on the ball with technique and are organized and can make good decisions as they come through the club system and get older. On this next chart, we see a similar type of key where our workload is number 1 to 5 with the same color-coded symbolism here with a numerical rating. And U.S. Soccer is presenting this content distribution by technique in this slide. And again, this is directly out of the manual for those that want to study this further and in more detail. So on the left-hand side, we see technical and then the subtopics under technical. 1 passing and receiving, 2 running with the ball, 3 dribbling, 4 turning, 5 shooting, 6 ball control, 7 heading, 8 1v1 attacking, 9 shielding the ball, 10 receiving to turn, 11 crossing and finishing, and 12 1v1 defending. And as we look across the top of the chart from left to right, once we get past technical, we're looking at our age groups once again from U6 up to U18 and the subgroups of the stages: initial, basic, intermediate, and advanced. So what we'd like our parents to review, and what we've been reviewing as a staff and continue to review, is what workload and what level of emphasis are we teaching each of the topics in our training sessions to various age groups of our players. So if we look at passing and receiving, and we're taking this fundamental notion from U.S. Soccer for their style of play to involve attacking soccer, quick ball circulation, passing and movement, the passing and receiving has a very high rating throughout. We see a different trend with technique than we saw for tactics, where a lot of our technical subtopics here have a heavier emphasis at a younger age. So this golden window of skill acquisition, age 6 through 12, trying to maximize by teaching as many of the techniques as we can related to soccer at earlier ages, where on the tactical slide that we reviewed prior to this, a lot of the heavy emphasis on tactics are being emphasized in the 11v11 game, U12, even U13 through U18. So important to note for our coaches, and certainly important to note for our parents who are helping support our players with development in our club. On this next slide, we observe, presented by U.S. Soccer here from the curriculum, we look at the physical component in the player development structure, and on the chart we see a similar type of chart that we observed in the last 2 slides with technique and tactics. The age segregation at the top, U6 to U18, the color-coded chart noting the level of emphasis placed on each age group, and then in the physical component we see some subtopics that are grouped together. Number 1, strength; number 2, endurance; number 3, speed. And below those 3 subtopics, we observe 5 independent characteristics: 1, flexibility and mobility; 2, coordination and balance; 3, agility; 4 basic motor skills, 5 perception and awareness. So here we take a look at the fourth component, followed by physical, technical, and tactical. We have our psychosocial element, our component, and this chart, again, taken straight from the U.S. Soccer curriculum. We want to share this information with our membership. As we take a look at the chart, we see the same layout as the previous three. The age segregation, U6 to U18, the color-coded workload key, the subtopics under psychosocial, we see listed as motivation, self-confidence, cooperation, decision and determination, competitiveness, concentration, commitment, self-control, communication, and respect and discipline. So what a great tool for our staff to study, and we certainly feel it's valuable for our membership to be aware of in an effort to provide a good learning environment and a healthy competitive environment. We want to make sure that players are engaged, and an important element, arguably the most important element, is the psychosocial component to player development. So we hope that our membership finds this information valuable as it relates to their son and their daughter.